In this next video, part 6, here is a range of the equipment that I'll be using. First of all, we've got the Rotring pigmented waterproof ink pens here of two different sizes. Just a different make here. Again, it's a pigmented ink pen, waterproof, so we can use watercolours paint over the top. We've got a Inktense Pencil 0.5, nice and easy to rub out if we need to. We've got two coloured marker pens from the Copic range and a colourless blender. I use this ruler to draw out the outlines that I'll show you in a minute. To stick my watercolour paper down, I use this kind of white tack. You can get it in blue tack, and it looks like this, like that. I use a brush to sweep off any rubbings, erasers. The watercolour paper that I'm using is Derwent's, and it's an A4 size, and it's £140 acid-free paper. I will also be using Faber-Castell Polychromos pencils, not the watercolour ones, but the standard ones, and Winsor & Newton Artist's watercolour paint, Derwent Inktense pencils and water, and then I'm going to be doing Derwent waterproof outliner Hatchings. So I'm going to be doing that in a minute. Let me just show you the Winsor & Newton paints, artist's grade paint, watercolour that I'll be using. I've shown this before. There's the lid, there's the labels, so that we can replace the colours in the colour wheel. Here's the Polychromos pencils that I'll be using, just this one out of the range, the orange one, and the green one out of the range. Here's the chart for the Derwent Inktense pencils that I'll be using. So first of all, let's start off with the Copic marker pens. I'm going to use the chisel end rather than the brush end. So I'm just going to start here. I'm just going to do a line across. Trying to keep it steady there. And then I'll now do the green. Again, chisel end. I'm just going to leave a gap between the two. Now most people realise that when they're using these Copics, they can layer them. If you're just using the one colour, if you layer them, you can get a shade in darker areas. Again, let me just put some more green down. But the lesson today is about gradations. How we go from a dark tone to a lighter tone and all the gradations in between. Well, this is how I will gradate these marker pens. Now, I'm not sure if anybody has seen this done before, but it's just the way I do it. So it's not necessarily the correct way, but it's certainly a way to try. We'll start with the orange colour, taken from the Polychromos range, and this one is the dark cadmium orange. So just pop them to a side. And what I do now is I'll do a continuity of this orange here. I'll just pause it. As I go to the right, I start applying less pressure, so I want it to fade out. As I'm gradating this, I'm applying those little ovals, not circles, ovals, little ovals. Less pressure as I get near the end. If I want less pressure, I hold the pencil further up. Now we'll do the green. This green is phthalo green, dark phthalo. As you can see, it's not exactly the same, but it will be good enough by the time I've applied some here as well. So now I've finished applying the Polychromos colour, I'll now take my colourless blender and just go over where I've done the pencil, and it will turn the pencil colour into ink-like, paint-like. Start around about mid-range. As I get towards the lighter area, I'm going to flick it, because I don't want to carry any colour across. So this is a colourless blender. I think it's just pure alcohol actually. I'll come back up here now into the colour, and now onto the orange. Again, starting mid-range. Start flicking as I get nearer to the white. Just keeping over where I use the pencil. I don't want to go into where I use the marker, because although this is called a colourless blender, what it actually does is move the marker ink, moves it around, and sometimes can give you an outer darker ring. Now I'm going to move down to the Polychromos coloured pencils, and this particular one is cadmium yellow light. So starting on the left hand side here, I don't want to apply as much pressure as possible. Number one, I might break the lead. Number two, it's going to be burnishing rather than colouring. And number three, it doesn't give me any flexibility to make the colour darker later if I get the gradation wrong. So roughly, if I start putting down my shape in here, not applying too hard, but I want the colour to be fairly strong at this end. Little ovals. Now I can go a bit darker later on there if I want to as I progress along here. Now if I look at the mid-range, or near the mid-range here, if I just put a little bit like this, knowing that that's going to be even lighter up here, up to white, so I'll put a bit there, and I kind of want to reach approximately there. Don't do that too strong though. As we move along, if we've got the pencil holding it here at this end, as I move along, I'll gradually creep up the pencil and apply less pressure. That helps me apply less pressure too. So I've gradually moved up here and I'm applying much less pressure. As I come back, I can apply a little bit more relative to how the rest is. So you can see there I'm barely touching it. I want to remain really light up there. That's giving me some guidance, some reference points to apply a little bit more. So as I get here, get a little bit more there. You can look where my hand is, it's crept up further up the pencil. I'm also turning the pencil as I go, very, very gradually though, and it's keeping that end kind of rounded. If I now want to burnish this with colourless pencil, which is oil based, I can then use one of these. That's a solid one, that's wood. Let's just add a bit here. Oh, you have to clean off any colour that you've got on there previously as well. So I just wiped off a little bit of remnant of a previous colour I had on this burnishing pencil, colourless blender. It helps me burnish. Right, I'm going to use this. It's called Iris Blue and it's the Inktense coloured pencil. Where I've applied this Inktense colour, just along the way, you probably can't see this, but little blobs sometimes appear and you have to use a very sharp pointed knife just to try and remove them. Just try to remove the little bits there like that. Now I've got another line here that I applied too heavy a stroke on, so I'll just attempt to erase a bit of that and go back over it. Making sure I've got the rounded side of my pencil where I've worn it down. I don't want to apply another sharp line here, so just a little bit there. The paper's going to be a little bit rougher as well where I erased it. Again, trying to stick to doing ovals. Now the lines where they cross with these type of pencils do tend to show out a little bit, but that doesn't matter because I'm going to apply water in a minute. And then we're going to see how vibrant this colour goes with the addition of water. When it dries waterproof. Here's the water from earlier. Doesn't matter, it's just a little bit tinted with red, but it doesn't matter now. I've made sure I've squeezed it out. Well, I want to leave a little bit on. Squeeze it out, but not totally dry. Now I'm going to start at this end and take the brush across. And we should have a gradation of blue. Once that's dry, I could apply another coat over the top. It dries waterproof, remember, so when you apply another coat on top, the previous coat isn't affected too much. Now we're on to the Winsor & Newton Artist's Grade watercolour paint. I want to use the permanent rose. We'll go for a red. I've popped a little drop of water in there and now I'm adding some colour. I want it fairly opaque. Now the opacity of watercolour paints gives a lot of confusion. Now any paint, if you water it down enough, will become transparent. So that's all you have to remember. Even though some are opaque, if you water it down enough, it'll be fine. So I think that's probably enough on my brush. And let's apply it. I hope I didn't put too much on. It's a strong colour. Well, it's still fairly strong at this end. If you apply a little bit more, I'll just lift a bit out of this end by applying some clean water. So what we did there in applying that particular paint, we did wet onto dry paper. Now that's not as forgiving, and if I'd have applied some water first on the paper it would have gradated better. So I just attempted to lift some out there at the end. Lastly, we'll take a look at using the Derwent waterproof outliner that we used on the previous video and apply some Hatchings. Now what this is going to show is just basically the tonal variations through gradation from dark to light and the gradations in between. Now remembering that the outliner pencil, beg your pardon, is waterproof, so you can then apply Inktense watercolour paints over the top, or even ordinary watercolour paints I just used there with the Winsor & Newton, or you can colour using colour pencils over the top. So to give me some evenness when I'm just going to do hatchings, not cross hatchings, I may apply some of them at the end. So I've actually put some measurement marks to give me a halfway measure. Now we want the pencil to stay fairly sharp as well, so that the lines remain more or less even. Now what we can do as well is I can actually put the ruler underneath to give me a stopping point. It just makes things a bit quicker. So I've got a halfway mark and I'll half again. So we have an even number of lines across, and then I'll add some more as we go further to the left. As you can see now, we've got an even number, but I'm also going to put a line in between each one and then start adding more to the left. And now some more, but this time I'm going to start about here. I'm just doing them freehand, so they're not perfectly straight. And now I'm going to do it again, but starting about here. I didn't do every gap, I missed a few out. Now I'll do some more, starting approximately here. And some more, and some more, and finally I'll just do some cross hatching here. So there we have a few options and variations on applying gradations and shadings in monochrome, meaning single colour. So I hope you've enjoyed that video. If you have, if you like it, please click on that like button, because it does help the viewing count and it keeps me motivated. So thanks for watching. Subscribe, look out for my next video in this series. I don't know how many it's going to be, approximately 30 to 50 videos. It'll get more advanced as I progress. So thanks for watching. Cheers. Bye bye.